It's my pleasure to welcome you the third Agriculture Seas webinar of Pakistan Academy of Sciences. It's a collaborative effort between different institutions, and I'm honored being one of the conveners. Today, we have with us a very strong panel, but we also have the backing of industry and the government. Sayyid Yawar Ali, Chairman Nestle, will co-chair the event with the Provincial Minister for Livestock and Dairy Development, Sardar Hasnain Dreshik Sahib. Our two keynote speakers are Dr. Sajjad Khan. He is Vice Chancellor, Cholistan University of Veterinary and Animal Sciences. And we are extremely grateful that we have with us Professor Holly Nyberg from Washington State University Pullman. Here I would like to acknowledge the brokerage done by Dr. Asif Chaudhry, Vice President at Washington State University Pullman, who introduced me to Professor Holly Nyberg. Among the discussants, we have academia, we have government experience, and we have industry representative. Our discussants are Professor Zafar Qureshi is Dean of Faculty of Veterinary Sciences at University of Agriculture, Faisalabad. And we have a young faculty member from Barani Agriculture University, Dr. Moeen. And we have with us Dr. Tasneem Kausar, who is former breed improvement head at Punjab government's livestock and dairy development. And we have with us Dr. Farooq, who runs his own semen facility. I'm looking at the list of participants, and we have Dr. Afzal with us, former chairman of Pakistan Agriculture Research Council, and he has done huge service to livestock sector. So I will also request Afzal to stay on, and we would like to hear from him once the presentations are done. I'm no expert on dairy, but I have had my layman observations, and I do have some understanding of genetics. Sajjad Khan, Vice Chancellor, please present your case study of Pakistan. That will be followed by Professor Holly Nyberg. Dr. Sajjad. Your presentation is visible, Sajjad Khan. Please open your mic.
Let me do it. Yes. Now, can you hear me, sir? Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good. So let me start with my presentation. I'll be discussing what we have in Pakistan, although I'll be focusing more on Punjab because I have experience working in Punjab and with the livestock department. I have some information regarding the other provinces, and I'll be, of course, sharing that also.
Dr. Nikwar, I thought you wanted some opening remarks from me because.
Yeah, that. Yes, sir. Can you have a few minutes maybe for your remarks, and then I can continue?
Okay, I thought it would be better if Sayyid Yawar Ali speaks after two presentations.
Okay.
Is it okay, sir? Sayyid Yawar Ali. Sajjad, please carry on.
Yeah, so let me define my simple way of defining what is meant by genetic improvement. The future generation of animals, they have better potential to perform as compared to present generation. And of course, it implies that selection is there, genetic gain is there, and we have some breeding objectives before that. And farmers are earning, and maybe community is also benefiting. So, but the simple definition. Otherwise, people have equated artificial insemination with genetic improvement that we, of course, as geneticists, is difficult to, comprehend. Pakistan has a lot of population of livestock. The four main species: cattle, buffalo, sheep, goat. The last census in the x-axis, you can see we had in 2006, and the 2016 are just estimated figures. So everything is going up because the human population is going up, and if the productivity is not there, of course, you have to match with the demand of the livestock products. The exact values are that we have some 90 million cattle, buffalo, and some 100 million sheep and goat. So these are the official figures, apart from, of course, camels, which contribute a little bit to dairy, and we have, of course, horses, asses, and mules also. I'm not touching poultry in this presentation. The contrary figures are given by the Punjab livestock census that was done in 2018, which tells you that since last census of 2006, everything has gone down instead of going up. So I don't know what is the reality. Although maybe the downward trend is not that sharp, but because they have a household to household survey, so I'm not sure, but this is a published document of 2018. So either they have to correct themselves, or maybe the central government has to revise their estimates. The distribution of cattle is in the southern Punjab now, because the grazing lands, of course, they squeezed for the last 2 decades. So you can imagine that the cattle is mainly in the southern Punjab, and buffalo, of course, is still distributed in the central and the eastern side of the Punjab. For sheep and goat, they are also in the southern Punjab. Sheep is in the western side of southern Punjab, while goat is, in the southern part. So camel is also in the western part of the Punjab. So the distribution of these species is, of course, not the same across Punjab. What the contribution is of these different species, mainly we get milk from buffaloes, some 60%. Cows still contribute some 36%, and some comes from sheep and goat or camel. The average per capita is 164 liters, which is 100 maybe liter less than US. And for meat, we are having per capita 21 kg, which is also 100 kg less than US. So, but meat is mainly coming from 50% almost is beef, and mutton some 35%, and poultry meat is 16%. This is the recent most economic survey. I'll be discussing this genetic improvement in 3 segments: within breed selection, crossbreeding, or breed replacement. I'll not be touching gene substitution or marker-assisted selection, etc., because we don't have anything like that yet. So first is that how we are utilizing cattle and buffalo for within breed selection. So we have 5 breeds. The center one, the Neeli Ravi, is the main breed in Punjab. We still have some population of Neeli and Ravi, and Kundi is in Sindh province. And we have a reasonable population of Azakheli buffalo in KP, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Performance recording has been going on, but off and on. And we have artificial insemination. The official figures are that maybe around 10%, but the farmers, they say that no, it's not even 10%. Accuracy of selection in these project testing programs is very low. Intensity also extremely low, long generation interval, and what you expect, very low genetic gain. Another peculiar feature of this buffalo is that hundreds of thousands of them, they go to big cities, especially the Karachi colonies. 500,000 is the estimated turnover every year, and most of them get slaughtered after 1 year of lactation. On government side, we have a Buffalo Research Institute in Punjab, which is supposed to be taking care of within breed selection. At least in Punjab, no such institution is available across other provinces. Another specific is that we have small holding system. So maybe some 90% of the population is with 5 to 10 animals per farm. The same is true almost, maybe some 85% of the population is with smallholders. So it, of course, makes it even more challenging to have any breed improvement program. The cattle, dairy cattle, I have listed 3 breeds, Red Sindhi, then Sahiwal and Cholistani. Of course, the Sahiwal is more productive of the 3. I haven't included Thari, because to me, Thari is at least theoretically dual purpose, but we know that it has even this dual purposeness has depleted over the years. But there's only one farm in Sindh, Nabisar Road, and I have gone there, and to me, it's really very difficult to say that if it's still maintaining its milk production potential. Project testing program has been going on with Sahiwal for the last 15-20 years. Artificial insemination is still there, but the supply of semen from good bulls, it has been, not very sustainable, to the extent the farmers want it to be sustainable. The district population, well, 5,000 or 7,000 cattle is, not enough for project testing program, especially when you have 1 million or 2 cattle. 2 million is the right estimate from the last 2006 census for Sahiwal. Human resources, I'm afraid that Livestock and Dairy Development Department is running out of the human resources who can take care of project testing program. And there are issues for the induction of people in these programs. We have a full-fledged research center for conservation of Sahiwal cattle. Now it's called Indigenous Breeds in Punjab. That is supposed to be taking care of the performance recording, endeavor of this within breed selection. I myself did these breed standards for Sahiwal and Nili Ravi Buffalo, and now I have a pressure for, of course, Cholistani, because I'm now in the Cholistani, in Cholistani University. We are there where we were. You can see that the Sahiwal line down here around a little less than 2,000 liters per lactation. And that was the same when we stretched this line back to 1910, or because we started there. The Sahiwal development started in 1906, actually, 1916. The dairy cattle, as you know, has gone up with this mass scale pedigree and performance recording. And now they started 2010, the genomics also. And of course, this line has to go up and up. So, and the trend for Sahiwal is almost similar for Buffalo. So we are doing something, but the gains are not really very tangible. And there are so many reasons, although to me the major issue is the lack of the commitment by the government, and of course the human resources also. Now the second part which I think may be possible for genetic improvement is crossbreeding. We started in the 70s when the artificial insemination started. The first 2 experiments were started by the University of Agriculture, Faisalabad, and Livestock Production Research Institute. That yes, F1 is better in performance, but you could go to 75% if you have better management. Milky farm, we have a very big population at Milky farm, some 25,000 cattle there. Most of them are crossbred. And I have referred to this Cunningham and the sisters 1987 report from FAO that actually helped so many countries that what the crossbreeding policy should be. Because they analyzed some 43 studies from Asia, Africa, and Latin America, and they came up very, very concrete, recommendations. We have been getting everything. Many of these breeds came here in the form of semen, but mainly our breeding policy still is according to what FAO recommended, that you just restrict yourself to Holstein and Jersey. Although, Ayrshire was extensively used in Africa, but all these were donated semen, so we have been receiving them. And of course, it can pose threat to, if your indigenous breeds are not conserved. Recently, some of my friends were wishing that we had tested gyr also, but already Sindh government has imported gyr and they are crossing it. So my fear is that after maybe 5-10 years, we will see another, failed story of gyr crossing out. At least this is my fear. I don't know what happens. I had suggested Punjab that to have some crossbreeding, very, planned crossbreeding. They started with that, but lately, then after that, there were some pressures, I think, from the farmers and political pressures. So then it was left open. So the Saiwal people, they think that there is, posing a threat to the Saiwal and other breeds. There is an effort internationally of the new breeds, development of new breeds. In Pakistan, we don't have any attempt except for a beef breed called Nari Master back in 1960s, I think. It started in Balochistan. India did a good job for Sunandini, and then they are working on freeze-wall. And freeze-wall, as you know, is they are using the military farms. And they are claiming that it has 3,000 plus liter. I think I'm getting some, I don't know, some cartoons on my slides. I don't know what they are, but let me continue. So these Saiwal and Red Sindhis, they were taken to some maybe 27, 30 countries. And people have developed their own breeds like Australian Friesian Saiwal, Australian Milk Zubi, Jersey was used by Vietnam. These two are from Australia. Cannon Swiss Fries in India, Mafriwal Malaysia, Wapwa in Tanzania, and even Bangladesh tried Pabna Saiwal. And New Zealand is, they are selling the Tar Indicus, Taurus and Bos Indicus, Crossbred C. But in Pakistan, we don't have any such attempt. The third option for maybe enacted in 2014, cow importation still don't have those rules because they are not there in Breeding Act. Initial failures, we know in the exotic cattle was in the 80s, but recently there are both successful and failure stories. The government, the central government provided me this information last week that yes, we are. Can anybody see my screen? And these, somebody is trying to maybe, I don't know. Somebody is trying to put some cartoons on my screen.
Yeah. No, please
anyway,
carry on. Carry on.
So please ignore that. Let me continue. The exotic cattle that we are getting in number, around 8,000 to 10,000 cattle come every year. And generally they are Holsteins. And sometimes they are Holstein crosses also, because the imported farmers, they are not that educated to, I have been to a few such farms where they did not know, what we were getting. So a lot of capacity building is needed really, even if we are importing exotic cattle. Exotic semen is also coming, and exotic semen is coming 1 million or so, you can see, every year. The failed story with the government. Anji, can I? failed story for the government of Holstein and Jersey importation was that we did in back in 80s. And then the initial enthusiasm is always there, but then the, production it went down, and then both the herd was had to be culled because it got positive for brucellosis. And the same is true for the one of the attempt that was in KP, because they imported Dutch Friesian, and there it got infected with leukosis. The herd is still there, and the detection is quite difficult from the local resources. But the productivity has gone down to less than 3,000 liters. So that is the, but also, I mean, I thought I should also share this, that our primary setup is a veterinary setup. That was needed when we got independence, but I'm not sure if we need that veterinary setup now, because things have changed and so many sciences have emerged. And if we have to utilize these developments in science and technology, we must change this veterinary setup. We have government setup where only veterinarians can be employed, and the private sector, of course, is absorbing the animal science and dairy technology graduates. So that is another, I think, issue. So to me, government setup must rethink what they are doing. In terms of the genomics, Dr. Moin is there as a discussant. Maybe he can throw a little more light on this. Recently, we have this livestock genomics center in Arid Agriculture University, Rawalpindi, and we have 5 sub-centers of this, Pakistan. And I'll be having the 6th center, hopefully, soon in my university at Cholistan also. So, but it is just a beginning, I guess. We need to have a lot more initiatives of this kind where we can produce the human resource. Otherwise, it will be difficult to harvest and benefits from this genomics technology. So let me, I still have some 5 minutes, so I thought this summary, I can have some way forward also. So the first issue is that we have a lot of indigenous animals. Many of them are not very productive, so there should be some culling strategy, campaign where government can capacity build these farmers and maybe in somehow help them to get rid of some of the animals, because otherwise they will pose a huge threat to the land resources and the water resources, which are already, dwindling. The second point is that the programs are very, little, the genetic improvement programs. So they have to have professionals who can take care of these programs. Otherwise, if there are no reforms in livestock and development, I'm not sure if in the near future, in the next decade, if any private setup will take up any breed improvement program. On the developing country scenario, it has to be government, but my feeling is that LNDD must reform itself so that it can produce animals which are better than the previous generation. The third point, I already said probably that there should not be off and on of these programs, because sometimes a single person, decides that it should be stopped, and then another person, secretary or the others, up there, they decide that it should be on. So how can you run a interesting program or performance recording program after 10 years to make it 0 and then you restart again? So there can be no genetic improvement ever. You will be, circulating in those circles. Yes, I think if genomics or even in vitro fertilization technologies, they have to be harvested. I think a lot needs to be changed. It has the veterinary setup, I think veterinary extension and artificial insemination, to me, is not a government job. Let's facilitate private sector so that they can do that. And government is, they can take up the genetic improvement program, really in a real way. The fifth point, I think, is that we must stop haphazard crossbreeding. Punjab does not allow haphazard crossbreeding, but its implementation of the act is not that good, and we must, I think, strengthen the Research Center for Conservation of Indigenous Breeds, Buffalo Research Institute, where the human resource is not there, the really needed human resource. Then, of course, these Buffalo Breeder Association, the Civil Society, or good breeder society, these needs also to be strengthened. I think breed replacement needs a lot of capacity building of the farmers. But along with that, we must help those who have good animals so that they don't, get into other auctions. They continue raising those good animals. My feeling is that buffaloes we are wasting. There should be some mechanism where we can recycle them. Sindh has started some recycling mechanism of buffaloes, but Punjab doesn't have. The buffaloes, they once taken to Karachi, they don't come back. We can definitely, if we decide that we can have our own breed, we can utilize the 25 farms with the military, which are reasonably recorded. I won't say scientifically, but reasonably recorded. And we can also come up with something like Freeze One. We can name it as Park Frisian or Freeze Park. So I think with that, I thank you everybody for listening. So my 20 minutes are over. That's all. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Sajjad Khan, and I would now request Dr. Holly Nyberg to take over.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen here with you.
Yes. Please go ahead. You can share the screen.
You see that? I'm trying to share the screen. It's not coming up. You're not seeing it. Yes. So yeah, it's not giving me the option. It has the whiteboard and iPhone. Do you have this? You have the slide, right? Would that be a possibility?
It's showing now.
Oh, you can see it now.
Yeah, but it went off again, but it was there.
Okay, let me go back.
Huh?
Okay, can you see?
You need to send the, yes, that's it.
Okay, all right, then I'll go from here. That'll be great. So I'm going to talk today about genetic improvement in dairy cattle in the United States and the challenges that we faced getting there, and how maybe some of our challenges could be pertinent to Pakistan and having some increased improvement of production there. So our journey for increased dairy production, I'm going to go through some key factors that I thought were important for us. So there has been, over the years, we have here in this graph on the y-axis, we have the annual milk production per cow in pounds, and on the bottom we have the years, and the solid line is the US production, and the dotted line is Canadian. The dash 6 represents 2/3 of the cow's milk produced in the European Union in 2007. And what this basically shows is that we have an increasing trend in milk production over those 50 years. And how we got there is what I would like to talk about. And in the first few years, the first years up to like 1980, most of the gain in production was due to improved animal husbandry. And that includes nutrition and other measures that we'll talk about. And then after that, most of the gains that we had in production was due to genetics. So right now we have 60% more milk produced in the United States from 30% fewer cows than we had 50 years ago. And 56% of that is contributed to genetics. And the upside of that is that the majority of the gains that we have seen is because heritability of production is very high at 0.25 to a 0.3. So there's a lot of opportunity there to make improvement, and there's a lot of variability in the genome to exploit in increasing milk production. So in my view, the key factors that were involved in our increasing milk production was, as I mentioned earlier, improved husbandry practices. And this primarily at the beginning involved improved nutrition. Nutrition is key for so many things. It's key for reproduction. Without reproduction, we can't have lactating cows. So meeting the demands of the animals in the nutrition arena was key to increasing production and reproduction. We've also found that reducing cattle stress by having appropriate shelter in the heat and in the cold was particularly important. Also, that means having low stress handling. As animals are stressed, they produce less, they require more nutrients for the same level of production. And also improving how we milk cattle and how we identify disease at an early stage. If we identify lameness, things like that. Also increasing sanitation and monitoring for disease on a consistent basis was very important. But having said that, the other thing that's absolutely critical is standardized long-term record keeping. And this goes back to identifying what it is that you really want to improve and being specific about it. So you might say, yeah, we want to increase milk production, but what specifically? Do you just want to increase kilograms of milk? Do you want to increase protein content? Are you looking for increased milk fat? And then how are you going to prioritize that with reproductive traits and health traits? So those things all need to be considered when you devise what kind of records you want to keep, and then they need to be consistently kept over the long term. Another key factor in the United States was the increased size of dairy herds. In the beef sector of the United States, the average size of the herd is less than 50 animals, so much smaller than in the dairy herds. The dairy herd size varies by region of the country. In the Northeast, there's much smaller herds. Those are more populated areas. So the size of the herds are, under 200 animals. Whereas in the West, it's very different. It's less populated. There's more forage access. And so in the West, the average dairy size is over 1,000 cows. Why that dairy size is important is because large dairies benefit from economies of scale. They can have resources and invest in resources that you wouldn't be able to do if you had a small herd, because it's not spread over enough animals to make it economically feasible. It also allows us to withstand small profitability margins on a per head basis that you couldn't withstand if you just had 5 to 10 animals. And so the increasing size of the dairy herds has been a key factor in increasing milk production in the United States. With the increasing size, it allowed justification for automation, which reduces labor costs and allows you to buy equipment such as automated calf feeders, calf activity monitors, so that we understand animal welfare better, but also so that we can detect estrus without having somebody stand there and watch as much, because a lot of times it's correlated with activity. We have automated milking systems and inline milk sensors for the identification of disease. And also electronic IDs have been key because it allows us to quickly identify what animals are having problems by just scanning those IDs and then directly translating that into the record keeping system. The downside of this is that we have a lot more ability to take advantage of these automations than we are currently using. And mostly that is because we don't really know how to do it. There's a lack of training of the producers themselves, advisors, and the veterinarians on how to utilize this data to its full potential. And so that's something that we are continually challenged to do a better job with. Another obvious key factor was the increased use of artificial insemination. AI in the beef sector in the United States is only responsible for 7% of the calves born, whereas in the dairy industry it's over 70%, and that's facilitated by the everyday handling of the dairy cow. And that has also opened the doors for other reproductive technologies such as embryo transfer and sex semen. Sex semen has really gained a foothold where we want to identify those elite dams and sires and breed those individuals to semen that is for females so that they can get replacement heifers out of those individuals, and they don't have to have as many individuals to get those elite females. So the increased use of artificial insemination has been very beneficial in moving the genetic progress of the dairy herd forward. In genetics, the record-keeping system that was started and has been pursued on a national level by breed associations and has really helped us identify traditional predicted transmitting abilities, or PTAs. And those have been based on pedigree, the performance of their ancestors and themselves when that data is available, and progeny data. The downside of this is before we have enough progeny data, it actually takes years to get those accurate PTAs. And this is expensive because you can only follow so many bulls. You have to select those ahead of time and follow those for a number of years. And the genomic era is allowing us to do a little better job of that. And it's less expensive, so we can actually screen more animals in a cost-effective manner. So the PTAs in the United States are available through breed and dairy associations. The AI companies that offer semen for sale keep these as well. And the government, until recently, was very important in getting the data and calculating the PTAs on a regular basis, and then publishing that data widely so that anyone could use it. Now that has kind of been taken over by the Council on Dairy Cattle Breeding, which is not a government entity, but the government researchers still feed information into that entity. So with sequencing, a whole genome sequencing and sequencing of the genome of Bos indicus and Bos taurus cattle, we, as you know, we have identified millions of single nucleotide polymorphisms, or SNPs, and this has led to inexpensive genotyping technology, which has then allowed us to identify which variants are associated with which traits, and that's allowed us to do prediction at an early age. So as soon as that animal is born, we're able to do that genomic prediction, and that has resulted in an increased accuracy of our ability to predict the performance of the offspring. So millions of cows have been genotyped across the world and in the United States, And when we use this genotyping information in collaboration with the traditional information, these genomic enhanced PTAs really allow us to identify elite animals at an early age and to make much greater and faster genomic improvements. So how much more accurate are they? Well, the PTAs on traits will differ because it's based on the heritability as well. But there are many traits where the accuracy is equivalent to having 30 offspring on the ground. And so for a cow, that's more than her lifetime production unless you do embryo transfer. And you can get that information shortly after they're born. For bulls, of course, that would take at least a year for you to breed them to enough animals so that you could get that kind of information. So it allows us to reduce generation interval in some cases, because in AI companies and other companies that are trying to really push the envelope on increasing genetic prediction, they're actually doing testicular biopsies and having flushing of prepubertal heifers such that they have offspring on the ground by 12 to 14 months. And so this substantially changes the generation interval. Another way of changing the generation interval is increasing the nutrition so that those animals cycle early and so they have calves earlier. It is less expensive to identify these elite animals with genomic enhanced PTAs because we don't have that big time lag. So that gives us the potential to increase selection of intensity because we can look at a bigger pool and then we can choose the absolute top of that pool. The other thing to remember is genomic enhanced PTAs are super for traits with traditionally low heritabilities and traits that occur late in life. So identifying reproductive traits and who is going to do well at reproductive traits or health traits that we usually don't see until after the selection process has occurred is another advantage of genomic enhanced PTAs. So as we all know, to increase the rate of genetic progress, there are some key components: decreasing generation interval, which we have mentioned briefly, increasing the accuracy, which we can do through genomic prediction or by getting accurate records on a consistent basis, and increasing the selection intensity by being more choosy about which animals we're going to keep in the replacement herd. So to get the benefit of genetics, remember that those husbandry practices have to be optimized and emphasized. If we don't have adequate husbandry practices, those animals are never going to live up to their genetic potential. And so even all of the genetic things, manipulations that you do, you're still not going to have that increased performance. So you have to get the husbandry practices right to really get the benefit of the genetics. So here are my thoughts on the challenges of implementing some of these new changes. We need to address small farms. If we're going to have smaller farms, we might have to have shared resources so that they can have equipment and specialization to maximize some of the benefits that we're seeing with larger farms. So maybe, they can have a centralized sharing of cryo tanks, or they can have AI companies that can make sure that they service those smaller farms because it's not feasible for them to buy a cryo tank or to have somebody within their farm trained to do AI. So in the United States, we have AI companies that offer those services, and they will come through and they will top off semen tanks with liquid nitrogen because that's not something that everybody has access to. Also, we're going to need to have a way of collecting data in a systematic way, and that's very hard for small farms. So that is another thing that we might have to consider on how we could easily share resources to have that support. And I think education, husbandry veterinary and genetic topics and have those integrated into the general public is very important, because as I mentioned, if we don't do those things well, we're not going to get the benefit of improved genetics. And so I've kind of talked about the animal husbandry a bit. Nutrition is key to health, reproduction, and performance. We need to make sure that we have adequate nutrition through forage access. If we use fodder systems or green chop, that really varies across the year on how accessible that is and the quality of those feedstuffs. So having hay or other kinds of forage and or concentrates that are, or silages that are useful for them throughout the year, regardless of whether we're in a really rainy season or not, would be important. I think it's important to address how we're going to meet the energy requirements of a high producing cow, because as she falls off and it becomes an energy deficit situation, her health is going to deteriorate, her performance is going to deteriorate, she is not going to breed back, and she can die if those are deficient enough. So it's important to make sure that we address the energy requirements, we get the mineral and trace mineral supplementation right, and that we make sure that the growing animals get the protein that they need at the time that they need it. If we have these nutrient requirements unmet, that doesn't just affect the current cow, but it's also going to affect her fetus in a lifetime of decreased performance. In animal health, sanitation and hygiene is very important as far as reducing the stress of animals. We need to reduce the stress to improve performance and the health of the animals. Veterinary service and consultation helps us identify disease and issues early and treat them. We also need to make sure we have vaccination programs so that we do not have, big disease outbreaks. And we can also use genetics for selection of disease-resistant animals. So for reproduction, nutrition is absolutely essential for estrus cycling at a young age and return to estrus after calving. Detection of estrus can be a challenge in a small herd. I know I have a few cows, and if you have a really dominant cow, sometimes nobody's going to mount her, and it's going to be harder to identify when she's in estrus. Some cows don't show estrus, so that can be a challenge for individuals if you don't use AI or if you're not going to synchronize. AI could actually be easier for small farmers than natural cover because you don't have to have a bull. I know that maybe several farmers might share a bull, but that can also be a hazard. If you can get a centralized source for semen tanks and for filling up those tanks, I think a lot of times once somebody does that and they see the difference in those cows, that you can get those guys on board. Also, testing bulls is important to make sure that they're actually fertile and that they don't have disease and that they're spreading to all of the herds that they're servicing. I'm almost out of time here, but I can't stress enough how much we need to keep good records, how it needs to be a systematic recording so that we can identify superior and inferior animals, and to prioritize and identify what the breeding goals are, and then to monitor that progress. Once the record system is in place, then really we can attack it on the genetic side, but that has to be, the record system has to come first. The genomics comes after the traditional PTAs are in place, because you'll have to do those research studies to identify the markers for prediction in each of the different breeds, because it's going to vary a little bit. So I think that's something that's going to be important to prioritize, that we get the traditional PTAs in place, offer semen for sale on bulls with that information so that you can move forward. And I already talked about this a little bit, that we start with the traditional PTAs and then move forward with genomics. So I'm going to stop there, and I think if there's any questions that we'll be willing to take those at this time.
Thank you, Holly. We will take questions after a round of discussion. I would now request Sayyid Yawar Ali to take over and start his comments. Please unmute yourself. Sayyid Yawar Ali.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Ikrar Saab. I think it's a great initiative for arranging this webinar and on this very important subject. And for the participants, I just wanted to mention that a little while earlier, I had asked Dr. Ikrar that we should have a way forward. So I'm very grateful to Professor Nieberg, who has given us the way forward in very much detail. So thank you again from all of us. Secondly, I'm just making a few comments. We have a whole galaxy of Pakistan genetics and breed improvement experts. So I think we need to then develop our own Pakistani action plan to produce high yielding dairy cows. One or two things that came out of Dr. Sajjad's presentation. One, I think, very clear message came that what would be the role of the government and define the role of the private sector. One of the main reasons is because there are limited resources. So if the government is going to do breeding, it's going to do nutrition, it's going to do extension, it's going to do recording, that whole and also they're into, you know, medicine, animal medicine. It's that whole, the resources are not enough. So you, as mentioned by Dr. Nieberg, we need to prioritize where to put the money in, and also urge the government, and we all need to do that, that, you know, livestock sector is bigger than the crop sector. So it must get its due share of resources. Finally, I just want to mention, and I think Dr. Sardar Dreshik is not here, but he's very passionate about improving the livelihood of small farmers. So again, sir, thank you very much for this wonderful initiative, and God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I would now like to move on to our discussion panel. Dr. Zafar Qureshi has some difficulty in connecting with us. Afzal, Dr. Afzal, are you in? Dr. Afzal. Afzal.
He's there, but his mic is off, I guess.
Can you unmute yourself, Dr. Afzal? Afzal is his video is on, mic is not. Please unmute yourself. Not open. Yeah, Dr. Afzal, over to you.
Okay, I think thank you very much for really inviting me. I think let's look it over. Babar Ali Saab has also briefed up, summarized some of these things. But I think what we really need to do is go forward. And going forward, we need to have the government fix it up, its priority where they can invest. Most of the breed improvement work we have to have is more onto private sector, and maybe Nestle, Angro and others, they can take lead and really have some of the CSR funds allocated into that, and that type of things they can undertake. But I think the unfortunate part in Pakistan has been that reproduction has been made more of an equivalent of breeding kind of things. That whenever we talk of breeding, they mostly talk of the reproduction and that type of thing. So that, I think, is the clarity one has to really make sure, and that But I think unfortunate part is that we have been taking off and then going back to zero. We are taking off and then going back to zero on breeding aspects. Was that really 100% government really fault, or was the fault of all of us also, which really were steering the livestock sector somehow or the other, or advising the government into livestock sectors also. But I think one really has to do is what Holly said very rightly. You have to have a recording system properly and done and that. But I think some of the things which probably our strategy was wrong is we are putting up too much emphasis on small farmers. Now there are available large farmers also. Like in Bahawalpur division where we are working on really FMD, we have seen there is a more than 200, 300 farmers with more than 100 really cattle, particularly this Cholastani with us. We have their names and everything, and we will be very glad to share with colleagues who will like to work on to that. So I think that type of our scenario of working with very small farmers on genetic improvement, I think is not going to work really. Secondly, I think we should also work into Sajad's proposal of talking to the military and have that Frisian Park or Fresh Park new breeds developed there, because there's quite a controlled environment and they have quite a good resources into that also. I'm sure they will be very glad to do that also, but we need to approach it properly to the proper relevant authorities. I think keep that in mind. Breeding is very important that, but I think it's very important that we have the whole animal husbandry setup improved, and that is the breeding, but nutrition as well as reproduction. These nutrition, reproduction, and alleviating the stress. These are three major things. If we really do, we can even get from our existing really livestock around 30 to 40% extra milk production. Over.
Thank you very much, Dr. Afzal. Very relevant commentary. Okay, now I will request Dr. Tasneem Kausar. She is former Chief of Breed Improvement with Punjab government. Over to you, ma'am.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. To everyone, thank you very much for calling me as participant in this seminar. I'm like Holly, I'm also basically reproductionist and not feeling ashamed that I am in this seminar because it's about genetics, breeding and genetics. In breeding and genetics, Dr. Sajad is my teacher. So very few things, very quickly I will take up. I served this department as breed improvement for 8 years, direct breed improvement. Many good things were also done during this period, like Breeding Act was enacted, selection and awarding criteria for elite females and bulls were made. Fate of negative semen, because that was already using for the herds. That was decided that what will be the fate of that. But we cannot optimize the benefits of these good things also, because one thing is that the herd which is registered is very small. We could not get the results in genetic gain. Number two is the discontinuity, really. As Dr. Afzal has mentioned, that up and down, and that has really vanished all the results which we may have otherwise. I will share a paper from PIDE. PIDE is, I think so, one of the sponsor of this seminar, and I will request that such papers should not be only for publishing. This should be the policy papers, and they should discuss such papers with the relevant departments and Pakistan Agriculture Research Council also. the first breeding and genetics program was started in early 80s, and in 85, as in 85 reports, the average average national herd production was in buffalo, it was 2000 and 2,300, and in Sahiwal it was 2,200, and the research station's average was 3,600, and elite animals potential was 6,500, 6,500 of Sahiwal and 5,000 of buffalo. We could not tap that really, and this is really what should I say, really, this is surprising, not surprising, this is so you can understand really. I cannot express myself that what we have done really, that potential we have or not. But two things which I have learned from this webinar is, one is genetics, and to optimize the genetic is the husbandry, optimizing the husbandry practices, and both we are lacking in L&ED. Minister Sahab is not here, but I want to convey this through participants that government has to shift from veterinary to animal husbandry to production oriented things. Otherwise, the potential we have at this time, that will also be vanished. Priority have to given to genetics, and priority has to be given to the husbandry. At the moment, as Sajjad Sahab has shown one slide, that we are revolving around veterinary, and we are thinking that by treating the animal and by vaccinating the animal, we will double the production, which is not possible. Yes, we have to prioritize the things, as Jawar Ali has said, what private sector has to be done and what public sector has to be done. I think so many years back, this was discussed by Dr. Afzal with all the secretaries and provincial governments, that what should be the privatized and what is the responsibility of the government. Without wasting any time, the Punjab government or the other all provincial governments has to decide what they have to do and what they have not to do. But my message to all is that genetics is the base of livestock development, and if genetics is not there, we are not, I think so, liable to waste our millions and millions and billions of rupees on just the things which are not really rewarding us. Thank you very much. Over.
Thank you, Dr. Tasneem Akhtar. Now, Zafar, are you in? Dr. Zafar Qureshi? Zafar had lost his connection. Huh? He's in?
He's there, mic is off. He's there.
No, no. It's okay, sir. Now I can hear, sir. Hello.
We can hear you. Please, the floor is yours. Please go ahead and make your comments.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir, for inviting me, sir. And whenever, sir, I think whenever we talk about the improvement of the genetic potential of the animals, first of all, we need to go for the record keeping of our animals, and after the record keeping, then we have to select from those animals the best animals, and then after selection of the best animals, then sir, we should go for the breeding strategies of that. Just I was listening, Dr. Naseem was saying that with the genetic gain, we have to think about the improvement in the nutrition, and then of course the improvement of the husbandry. Yes, of course, this is also very important that with the genetic gain, we have to think about the improvement in the nutritional status of our animals, and then of course we have to improve the husbandry along with the control of diseases, and along with the taking welfare of our animals, and to take care of the environmental factors, particularly nowadays the climate change is there. And when we talk, sir, about the methods which are used for the improvement of the genetic potential of our animals, of course, the artificial insemination is there. And Dr. Sajjad has rightly said, because we don't have go rightly for this selection of animals, and we didn't actually go for the best animals available on the buffalo side or on the sahiwal side. And they have to talk about the artificial insemination, because the farmer actually made the result. So this is only, sir, possible with the selection of animals. And nowadays the people's particularly they are the progressive farmers are they are also importing the sex semen. We have to think about that, and we need to go after the selection of the animals. We need to go for the production of the sex semen, and I think this is a new thing which we can go for that. And then now people are also importing the animals for the improvement in the genetic potential, which after the selection of our native breeds, good animals in that, we should also think for the introduction of the embryo transfer, as well as sir, IVEP, in vitro embryo production. So these are the expertise are available here. We have in the University of Agriculture, Faisalabad, and we have the expertise, sir, in the US. Might be another as Dr. the owner that is also there. So they are also working on this. So on these lines, sir, we have to go for improvement in the genetic potential of the animals.
Thank you, Zafar. We will get some molecular science in here. We have Shahad Mansoor with us, and we have Moeen. But before I ask Shahad and Mansoor, I would like to know about private sector in the semen business. We have with us Dr. Farooq. So Farooq, over to you.
Yeah, I forgot.
Dr. Farooq. Farooq hai? Dr. Farooq, one of the panelists. Farooq, please unmute yourself. Can we get Dr. Farooq? Ji, Farooq Saab? Okay, we are having difficulty. Farooq is unable to, enter in. Dr. Shahid Mansoor, are you still there? Shahid?
Huh? Yes, please. Thank you very much. Dr. Saab, I'm here.
Yeah, please go ahead. We want to hear the molecular interventions, because Holly has made a good case for using, high tech.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that Dr. Sajjad Khan is aware that what we are doing here at NIPG, we have sequenced whole genome. It's not only the partial genome; it's the full genome with at least 20 to 30x coverage of 170 animals of all 11 breeds of cattle and all breeds of buffalo from Pakistan. So at least this provides us with the base of genetics or genomic selection. There was one question about the military involvement. So we are working very closely with the CIBG, Center for Bovine Genetics, which is under RVFC. We have signed an MOU with the RVFC at GHQ. So we are very much so we have provided them with the selection for the bulls, because they are keeping bulls, and now we are working with them to select heifers and their crossbred animals. But I think that one of the important thing will be that we go for a sex semen of local breeds of cattle and buffalo, because I think that this is going to be very important. So I made a case. We have some quotation. I mean, some from China. I tried from US. So Holly probably can help us, in connecting with companies that can provide us facilities. But I recently heard that there are now low cost methods available for sex semen. And this will allow, I mean, the accuracy may be around 80%, but I think that, we should go for local production of semen of our local breeds, and then, go for genomic selection. Thank you very much, Dr. Ikrar, for inviting for comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Shad. Farooq, are you back? Farooq Saab? Okay, let's move on. Muin from Barani University. Dr. Muin? Huh? Okay, please go ahead. Unmute yourself.
सर आवाज आ रही है आपको?
अब आ रही है.
सर आवाज आ रही है?
आ रही है. You are audible. Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Sir, in my opinion, there are few ingredients which are very important for genetic improvement. Dr. Sajjad Saab and Dr. Holly have already covered them. Just I want to summarize them. Number one is the animal breeds, and we do have the breeds in the form of Cholistani and Sahiwal cattle. Number two is the trained manpower. Unfortunately, after merger of 2-degree programs, we don't have specialized, you can say, genetic experts available now. There are very few, and most of them, they are going to retire very soon. So here we need to focus, because in DVM courses, we have just 5 credit hours for genetic. And these 5 credit hours, they are not enough for any, to produce any human resource for genetic improvement. Then, sir, the third one is the right man, right job. So in the department, the issue is that the expert of animal breeding and genetics, again, they are very few, just 1 PhD. And the heads of the departments, they are also non-ABG experts, particularly in RCCIB or other institutes. So that need to be changed. Then the sustainable selection program, as Dr. Salim mentioned, that we don't have sustainability. This is another important issue, and we should have a long-term policy, and it should be working at least for 10-20 years, coupling with the genomics. Then we can see its results. Recording is a very, very basic thing. Dr. Holly have covered, and Sajjad Saab, basically he is my teacher and mentor in this case. The existing recording setup, it is needed to be revamped. And in my opinion, if we can digitalize it, and we use the technology of the recording, RFID or other technologies, there are lots of, you can say, software and technologies available in the market. And even we can develop our own technology, our own softwares. We can help the farmers, breeders, and departments to make the recording more and more accurate. On this subject, we have already prepared the breeding objectives from the platform of the National Center. And Dr. Sajjad Saab, he was in fact heading that meeting in which we decided that which trait we should be working on. And we have communicated to the secretary of the department as well as to the director general production. And we are here to help them out wherever they feel problem. So once these basic things are there, then comes the intervention of the genomics or the embryo technology or the sex semen. Because if you don't have the superior bull, then which semen you will get? And so basic thing is that you have the full-fledged genetic improvement program, and you have enough records so that it can give you enough accuracy. And with the help of the genomics, this accuracy can be improved. And with the help of the sex semen, you can get more heifers. So, and embryo technology can multiply the good animals. So this would be the, you can say the number third, if I categorize it. Then the, after keeping all these things in view, we should be going towards the balanced breeding, because the US or the other developed nations, they have improved substantially their milk production. But the issues related to the other traits, which are correlated or sometimes negatively correlated, for example, fertility of the animals or the disease resistance, or the lameness, these issues are very serious for them. So in my opinion, if we are able to improve our local buffalo or cattle to the 5,000 or the 6,000 liter, it would be good enough. The Sajjad rightly said that if we are going to crossbreeding, then we would be very, very careful. We should have very, very well set objectives, just like the example of the Australians. They imported Sahiwal from us and they produced a balanced breed, which is very good working in the harsh climate, and its production is good enough. So we should have the set our own goals, and it should be a policy. And according to the policy, we can have a control breeding. And maybe after 5-10 years, we would have our own breed, which can survive in the harsh climate, in the hot climate, and can produce. So these are all my comments. And the National Center is working with the department as well as the breed societies, and we are working very, very closely with the Sajjad Sahab, and we always take his opinion and his suggestions to make it better, and we are here to support for this cause. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Moin. Our minister has been very patiently hearing all the talking so far. But before I request Dreshik Saab to wind up the event, I will ask first Holi and then Sajjad to give brief rebuttal if there is any. Holi. Huh? For her? Okay,
Yes. So, yeah. So, could you repeat the question, please?
Well, there is a question on the
chat.
On the chat.
Okay.
This is from Oman. Shahid also, okay. Question is, Holi, what is the ratio of A2A2 alleles in US Holstein? And the other question is from Oman. He's asking that should it focus on local breed or Holstein production?
Okay, so the first question was about alleles, is that correct?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. And how many, and so multiple trait selection or polygenic selection?
Yeah. Yes.
All right, so go ahead.
No, he's asking what is the ratio in your herds, A2A2 ratio.
I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
Holi, can I try again? Can I try it, sir?
Yes, please.
They're asking that there is an A1, A2 issue. So they're asking that what is the percentage of A1 or A2 animals in US? Generally, we know it's a 50%. I mean, the Holstein is 50% A1. But you can maybe support my guesswork. A1, A2, the devil in the milk issue.
I don't know. I don't know what you mean by A1, A2.
It's a beta case invariant.
So you're breaking up. I'm sorry.
I can maybe. I know. I mean, I have been reviewing it extensively. So I know that in Holstein, it's around. There are 2-3 population studies. We'll say maybe 40%, maybe 50%. So it's around that ratio. It's A1.
Okay, now to a question from Muhammad Al-Abri. He's asking what should be the preference, the local herd improvement or the imported blood?
It depends. It depends on your resources.
Yes.
Only you can take it.
So my perspective would be, so your local breeds have adapted to your environment, and so there's some for disease resistance and also the forage conditions and food that they're being exposed to. So I think that's important, and I think it's important not to lose that genetic adaptation. Now, it's also okay to, and I think the point to maintain like a biobank or whatever of those animals is critical, right? So that you don't lose those breeds. If you want to do some kind of crossbreeding, I think that's fabulous, but you need to also maintain lines of the indigenous breeds, because you may need to go back to those, right? So you may need to do back crosses or whatever to maintain some of the strengths of those breeds. So I think it's good to go ahead and bring other breeds in, but they're not going to have the adaptation that your indigenous breeds do. So you're gonna know up front that they're gonna bring in some traits that are advantageous to you and some traits that are not advantageous to you. And so you're gonna have to, once you decide what your breeding objectives are, you're gonna have to cull based on that. So the F1s are gonna have, you know, the greatest heterogeneity, and they're gonna have the best response. And then it's gonna start to decline, as you would expect with genetics. So I think it's important to maintain those local breeds, and so that you can go back to those, because the imported animals are not going to all bring all good traits. They're going to bring good traits and bad traits. And so you're going to want to cross back to maintain that disease resistance and things like that that are so well adapted already for your herds. That's my opinion.
Okay, folks, we can probably spend a little bit more time, but the minister has a commitment beyond 9 o'clock. So I request Sardar Hassan Dreshik to give us his observations that he has noted down, and his commitments, and the way he sees his department working in the days to come for breed improvement. Dreshik Sahib. Unmute word.
Assalamualaikum ji, am I audible? मेरी आवाज आ रही है जी?
जी, sir, you are audible, and we would like to see you also. You are not visible.
Thank पिछू कर रहा है.
So your video, audio is working, video is not. Okay, sir, you can go ahead. You're audible. Is out? Okay.
Assalamualaikum ji. Am I audible, Dr. Saab?
Yeah. Please go ahead, sir. You're fine now.
अच्छा सर, चलिए बस इतना ही खड़ा. Assalamualaikum everybody. Dr. Saab, Dr. Ikrar Saab, I'm extremely grateful that you have arranged such a very a webinar on a very important topic. I'm grateful to Sayyid Jawar Ali Sahab, Professor Dr. Holi, Dr. Sajjad Sahab, Vice Chancellor, University of Bahawalpur, Dr. Moinuddin Sahab, Chairman, Department of Animal Breeding, Dr. Tasneem Sahiba, a few other colleagues who have shared their comments. I would try to be very brief. I have been given this assignment about 2 years back in 2018. The few challenges which I have been seeing as the livestock department regulator of government of Punjab, the biggest challenge is that we don't have any reliable or credible data. Having no credible or reliable data limits us from knowing that where we stand, and if we don't know where we stand, how can we plan that where should we go to? So in Dr. Holi's presentation, she has mentioned that things need to be done in proper order. If the data recording and if the basics of genetics is known to us, that would be the first step, and then the genomics, and then the other multiplications, and then the other science and things would chip in. So my first step would be that, and my first request to all the experts who are available in this forum, there's representation from private sector, there are colleagues from government, there are ex-bureaucrats, and there are friends from academia, both local and international. I would request that this is the right panel who should guide the government to prioritize and to fix the things which it is doing. I agree with Sayyid Jawar Ali Saab that the contribution of livestock in GDP is much more in comparison to the crops, and I agree that we are not given our due share, and we should contest and we should try that we should be given more fund and more resources. But my priority today would be that, are we spending the amounts which we are given to us in the right direction? Are our progeny testing programs and our two institutions, one is Buffalo Research Institute, Patoki, and the other RCCIB, Jhang, are their data recordings and their breed improvement programs are working on the international standards or not? The Arid University has a very amazing institution which is the National Center of Livestock Breeding, Genetics and Genomics. Though it is the youngest among all the institutions, but it has got a team of very dynamic people who are young, who are heading the youngest institution, but their contribution towards the dairy cattle is very decent and very sane. So there's another comment which Dr. Holi made. She said that since 80s they have started improving their production, and she has mentioned two components of it. One was that they have improved their production through animal husbandry practices, and they have reduced their cattle by 30%. Their 30% cattle are giving 60% production, or some number was given in one of the slides. I forgot the exact numbers. She said that first step was our animal husbandry practices improvement, and the other step was the genomic improvement. I would like to know the percentage. What percentage of their production was improved by their animal husbandry practices improvement? And when the genomics came in, what percentage was improved? Dr. Tasneem Sahiba had a job, and the livestock department is mainly focusing on the treatment of cattle. I totally agree, and I and my secretaries and all the heads of departments, the additional secretaries, we are working that we should rationalize that if the government and if the department is focusing more on the health of the cattle, there should be a parity between our nutrition programs, between our breed improvement programs, between our animal husbandry programs, and other aspects or other basic pillars of the livestock sector. Last but not least, Pakistan is a unique case. Dr. Holi comes from America. There I have heard that their main livestock herd is of cattle. In Pakistan, we have both cattle and buffaloes. So we would be needing a customized solution, and that customized solution would be catering for both the cattle as well as the buffaloes. So these were a few brief comments and observations which I had to make. In the closing, I would just like to thank everyone for sharing a very valuable, like this I have been online since this started, since 7:30, and all the speakers have added a lot of knowledge to my personal, whatever I had known. So Dr. Sajjad Saab, your presentation was very, very sane and very to the point. Dr. Holi had expressed things that a layman like me can pick and understand all the things very briefly. So thank you, both of you. And thank you, Dr. Ikrar Sahab, that you have gathered such intelligent and such experts of their fields that I had got a chance to hear all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir. Holi has replied to a question on the chat. Maybe we can hear her once again. Holi, can you say a few words? You have written it on the chat, but he was asking.
Yeah,
Please.
so I think the question posed was what % of the improvement in milk production over the past 50 years has been due to genetics? And there was a study done by Kurt Van Tassel, and he reported that he calculated that 56% of the improvement in milk production has been due to genetics. And the rate of genetic improvement since we have introduced genomic selection has increased more than 4-fold. So once you get to that point, there is a lot of opportunity to more rapidly accelerate the rate of improvement. But as you mentioned, there's work to be done to get there. So.
Thank you. Thank you. Very well said. Okay, folks, I think we had a very useful meeting, as the Minister has very kindly expressed his views, and he has given us a lot of encouragement. On behalf of my partners, collaborators, and on behalf of all participants, we are extremely grateful to Holi. She has, given full attention to our demands and replied to the questions. There are a few more questions, but I think we can maybe continue through chat. And the event shall remain available on YouTube. You can watch the event and send your questions through social media. The purpose of this whole exercise is to put together some pathways, and I'm seeing a very clear indication that we can at least recommend pathways, and government is supportive, and we have the industry and academia on the same page, and hopefully we will continue to make progress. Since it has been said that 56% improvement comes from genetics, and that means 44% is still husbandry, and that husbandry includes primarily nutrition and housing. So I would like to let my colleagues know that we have already designed 3 more presentations. One would be on the fodders. UC Davis group will be doing that, both on green fodder and the processed products, hay and silage. And then we will do a pure nutrition event. And I have asked a very dear friend from Oregon State University, Neil Forsberg. He will speak on nutrition. And we are looking for a team. We're putting a team together to discuss rangelands and pastures. So there will be more sessions to address the husbandry part. And of course, my job is facilitation, and it will be up to the experts and the industry to take advantage of that. With these few remarks, I'm grateful to all of you for your attendance, and let's continue with this exercise in the days to come. Bye-bye.